Okay, I'm going to start talking about chapter 18, and I like how in my last video for chapter 17, I speculated at the end that this that my video was about 12 minutes long, and it turned out it was 20 minutes long. So I know it's a lot of me talking, but I wanted to make sure that I got these videos out and done for you because these chapters can be quite confusing, the trial chapters. And so anyways, I'll try to be quick, but no promises. So chapter 18, the only person testifying in this chapter is Mayella Ewell. She is the one who is accusing Tom Robinson of raping her. And I have this picture again. I just want to spend most of this discussion talking about how Mayella Ewell definitely is a victim. She may be pointing the finger at the wrong person. She may be accusing an innocent man, but she is a victim, and I do very much feel bad for her. This chapter is a difficult chapter to discuss. The topic of rape does come up. That's what this entire chapter is about. And it's very hard to talk about Mayella as someone who is being a bad guy when she herself has had so many bad things happen to her. So one thing, just to kind of drive home that point, on the first page of chapter 18, so on this book, that would be page 239. I wanted to, when Mayella Ewell first comes to the stand, Scout kind of makes a speculation, because she's a narrator. And Scout says, second big paragraph on this page, in Macomb County, it was easy to tell when someone bathed regularly, as opposed to yearly lavitations. Mr. Ewell had a scalded look, as if an overnight soaking had deprived him of protective layers of dirt. His skin appeared to be sensitive to the elements. Mayella looked as if she tried to keep clean, and I was reminded of the row of red geraniums in the Ewell yard. Remember, she has those red geraniums. Even though she's living in a dump, she still keeps those flowers. That's really important detail when we're thinking about Mayella Ewell. Scout says that Bob Ewell looks like he had the scalded look about him, like he only washed for the trial, and so he probably had to scrub really hard to get years and years of dirt after not bathing regularly. Yet Mayella Ewell looked like she did clean regularly. And imagine you live in the town dump. That's not easy to do. I imagine this chapter talks about how in order to clean you have to haul water and then you have to heat it up. And a lot of us live in houses with running hot water. It's easy to just turn on a tap and take a shower if you want to. But it's a lot of work when you are living in the Ewell household. So that's just one point for Mayella, how we feel bad for her. Another way we feel bad for her in this chapter is she starts crying right away. She is legitimately terrified of Atticus. There's no doubt about that. And she can barely even answer Mr. Gilmer's questions because she's thinking about Atticus, who is not even standing up or saying anything at the time. And when Judge Taylor says, "What's wrong with you? Why are you crying?" She says him, and this is on page 240. And she points at Atticus. And Judge Taylor goes, "Mr. Finch?" She nodded vigorously, saying, "Don't want him doing me like he done Papa, trying to make him out left-handed." Remember in the previous chapter, Atticus proved that Bob Ewell was left-handed, and that's important based on the bruises that Mayella has on her face. So Mayella is really nervous about Atticus, even though he's not even saying or doing anything yet. And Judge Taylor tries his best to calm her down. Mr. Gilmer finishes asking Mayella her questions, and then he hands the questioning over to Atticus. Now it's time for Atticus to ask questions of Mayella. And that's not an easy position to be in if you're a lawyer. You're defending a man of raping, of being accused of raping a woman, and now as a lawyer, you're asking that woman questions, trying to prove her word wrong. No one wants to have to be in that position, and I'm sure Atticus doesn't want to have to be in that position. He calls her Miss Mayella, and he calls her ma'am. Those are terms of respect, but she doesn't take it as respect. She takes it as sass, she calls it. And on page 243, she even says to Atticus, "Won't answer a word you say as long as you keep on mocking me," she said. "Ma'am?" asked Atticus, startled. Long as you keep on making fun of me, Judge Taylor said. Mr. Finch is not making fun of you. What's the matter with you? Mayella looked from under her under lowered eyelids at Atticus, but she said to the judge, Long as he keeps on calling me ma'am and saying Miss Mayella, I don't have to take his sass. I ain't called upon to take it. That makes her sound dumb. Or that may make her sound dumb to you, but to me, that makes her sound very sad. Not a single person in her life has called her ma'am or Miss Mayella. I'm sure some of you guys have been called, a lot of you guys have been called Miss or Mr. or Ms. This or that. Terms of respect, I try to say every once in a while when I'm talking in the classroom to people. We kind of take that stuff for granted. But Mayella has never had a single person be respectful to her. The rest of the town considers her to be trash because she's an Ewell. And her father, I mean, he's a piece of work. And the only other people that she interacts with are, her siblings. And they are, like Burris Ewell from the beginning of the book. They're definitely not going to call her ma'am or miss. The only people that would be calling her ma'am or miss are people like Tom Robinson. Because of the relationship between Black people and white people in the 1930s, Black people would be, expected to call white people miss or ma'am or with terms of respect. And, that was an unequal power relationship that white people had over Black people, especially at that time period. So anyways, Miss Mayella is not expecting anybody like Atticus to call her ma'am or miss, but he's not really sassing her. He's just being respectful. That's just his way. Atticus gets a picture of Miss Mayella's, now I'm calling her ma'am or miss, of Mayella's home life, and it looks terrible. We see that described in 244. Again, when you're thinking about her lifestyle, think of those red geraniums. The fact that she lives in a town dump is awful. Yet she still tries to grow flowers and make some part of her life pretty. On page 245, Atticus asks Mayella about her relationship with Bob Ewell, her dad. And he asks Mayella if Bob is good to her, if he's good to her. And she says he does tolerable, except when. So that's on 245. Mayella says he does tolerable. He is okay, except when. When do you think Bob Ewell is really bad to her? Just take a guess. When would Bob Ewell, her dad, be really mean to her? Except when? This is Atticus asking, except when what? Mayella looked at her father, who was sitting with his chair tipped against the railing. He sat up straight and waited for her to answer. Now, I cannot believe that Bob Ewell is allowed to sit in this audience and very plainly intimidate Mayella. He sits up straight when she's answering, and he's really staring at her. So, of course, she's not going to answer that question. Except when nothing, said Mayella. I said he does tolerable. Mr. Ewell leaned back again. Okay, Mayella was about to say something bad about Bob, so he leans forward. And when she says, nothing, I meant he does tolerable, he leans back, okay? Except when he's drinking, asked Atticus, so gently that Mayella nodded. And that's it. Bob Ewell is awful to Mayella when he's drunk. So Atticus asks about the court, and I'll let you guys read that. I'm trying to keep this under 20 minutes. But one thing that I should point out is when Atticus is really asking her the hard questions about the rape, about the attack and who did it to her. And she's accusing Tom Robinson, so he wants to know, all of the details. And anyway, she starts to cry again, which is understandable. And on 248, she says, I'll answer any question you've got. And Atticus says, that's fine. There are only a few more. Atticus says, I want to make sure that you are identifying the correct man who abused you, who assaulted you, okay? And he says, will you identify the man who raped you? And she says, I will. That's him right yonder. And Atticus turned to the defendant. Tom, stand up. Let Miss Mayella have a good look at you. Is this the man, Miss Mayella? And so here we have Tom standing up. Now, if you're watching the movie, This is where the movie is not like the book, and I've read a bunch of essays. Sometimes I have students compare, contrast the book and the movie in an essay, and this is one of the things that people like to yell about. In the book, Tom is very visibly crippled. His left hand, okay, so if we're looking at him like this would be his right hand, and this would be his left hand. His left hand is visibly shorter, 10 inches shorter, they say, than his other hand. And Mr. Sykes explains that it's shorter because it was caught in the cotton gin when he was younger. So Tom Robinson's left hand is mangled. So if he were to attack Mayella Ewell, let's think about Bob Ewell's testimony in chapter 17, and Sheriff Tate's testimony also in the same chapter 17. If he were to hit her, it would have to be with his right hand, and it would hit her, okay, this is his right hand, on her right side of the face, okay? So that's what we're dealing with right here. And I'm sorry, on her left side of the face. Wow, now I'm confused like Sheriff Tate. So that's what we're dealing here with here. This is the only arm of his that works. If he were to hit her, it would be on her left side of the face. But instead, her right side of the face was blackened. She had a black eye on the right side, and he couldn't possibly hit her with a crippled arm. Now, the movie makes it a little simpler to understand. This is a screenshot I took. It doesn't look good. Atticus has this glass, and he, in the movie, he tosses it at Tom Robinson, and he's like, "Catch this!" And Tom catches it with his good hand. He doesn't catch it with his left hand. He catches it with his right. And then Atticus says, "Now catch it with your left hand." And Tom Robinson says he can't because it's crippled. So the movie's different. But the big thing to note is that Tom Robinson's left arm is really damaged in a way that he can't use it, and it would make it very difficult for him to be the man who attacked and assaulted Mayella Ewell. Okay, so when we realize in the book, why Tom Robinson's left arm is injured and crippled, Atticus says again, this is on 249, he says, "Is this the man who raped you?" And Mayella goes, "It most certainly is." Atticus's next question was one word long: how? And to me, that's always a very, that's probably his toughest question that he asks Mayella. And that gets Mayella just raging. And just another point, and this is where I tell you that the book dances around the situation of what happens, what really happened. We know that probably Bob Ewell was the one who beat Mayella up. And Atticus is really going after Mayella again with the questioning, making sure he gets the story right, trying to get the truth out of her. And on 251, Atticus goes, "Who beat you up, Tom Robinson or your father?" And then there's no answer. And then Atticus goes, "What did your father see in the window? The crime of rape or the best defense to it? Why don't you tell the truth, child? Didn't Bob Ewell beat you up?" So Atticus here is directly accusing Bob Ewell of beating up Mayella. And he's indirectly accusing Bob Ewell of raping Mayella. He says, what did he see? The crime of rape or the best defense to it? Bob Ewell saw Tom Robinson in the cabin, and in Mayella's cabin, and he says, Bob Ewell didn't see Tom Robinson raping you. He probably saw a defense to it. Again, going back to how evil and awful of a man Bob Ewell is. And he asks Mayella to tell the truth. On page 251 again, he says, Atticus raised his head. "Do you want to tell us what happened?" But she did not hear the compassion in his invitation. Atticus desperately wants Mayella to tell the truth, and not only for Tom Robinson's sake, but for Mayella's sake. If you could put a guy like Bob Ewell in jail and protect Mayella from him, that would be the best situation. But Mayella is really stuck, and she is so frightened of Bob Ewell that she cannot come out and tell the truth. Again, this chapter is really awful. It's very sad. And there's a lot more than what I've discussed here, but at this point, I've probably gone on another 20 minutes about it. So I'm going to stop now, and hopefully that's enough to get you going with chapter 18.